Welcome again on the mini-course hosted by AVIATIONLAB, about EASA FTL temporary exemptions and FRM in COVID-19 in the recovery phase. Once again, I would like to invite you to join the AVIATIONLAB website at www.aviationlab.thinkific.com, where some of our quality courses are uploaded and available for distance learning. You could visit our website and have a quick preview of the courses. Moreover, now you could split the payment into 5 monthly payments of only €20. If you need bulk purchase for your company's needs, do not hesitate to contact us for special prices. When you complete any of those courses, a certification will be available for you. All those courses together with others are also available to be delivered in the classroom anywhere in the world. We could also provide you assistance to create your individual flight time specification scheme or to improve your safety management system from the prospect of fatigue risk management. Other channels that could reach us is Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We are looking forward to meeting you. Do not forget to connect and follow to get more industry updates. In Part 2, we saw the EASA guidelines regarding FTL extensions. Today we will continue to FTL exception and rest requirements under these guidelines, followed by risk assessment. Under normal conditions, we know that certain requirements exist as minimum for rest away from home base, as we can see on this slide from the FRM course of AVIATIONLAB. The rest period outstation should be at least 10 hours, with sleep opportunity of not less than 8 hours, at suitable accommodation, as before, but in this case, the operator should take into consideration heavy delays after the flight due to sanitary restrictions, reduced capacity of the airport, the increased time required to fill and proceed various documents, and most important, delay due to special tests that might be performed upon arrival. A new introduction from those guidelines is the possibility that being given to the operator to provide the rest period outstation, not in suitable accommodation, but within in-flight rest facilities. This mitigation is suggested from current guidelines because in some cases there is limited or non-existing suitable accommodation because of restrictions established by local government. To avoid delays or quarantine upon arrival, and to reduce the exposure of crew members to COVID-19. If the advantages outmatch the disadvantages, rest period away from the home base could be provided within in-flight rest facilities and reduced to 6 hours sleep opportunities, providing that Class 1 in-flight rest facilities are available, aircraft is on the ground, electrical power supply provided, there is mean of temperature control, no loading unloading the aircraft, and no servicing the aircraft takes place during the rest period. We do not have any previous data from this approach in the rest period, but what we know is that rest on board does not provide the same quality of sleep as a hotel room. So before an operator uses this mitigation, should evaluate the situation and monitor the consequences. Once again, we could check a slide from the FRM course of AVIATIONLAB about a reduced rest period. In general, a rest period could be reduced in 2 ways. On unforeseen circumstances under commander's discretion, and with FRM under certain conditions. For unforeseen circumstances, EASA guidelines state that the operators should avoid the use of commander's discretion to further reduce a rest period at the outstation. But regarding ORO.FTL 235C about reduced rest, the operator should be exempted from the requirement to have an established FRM. and priority should be given to the risk assessment under risk assessment requirements and fatigue mitigation measures related to reduced rest at home base for any extension of FTP including or not in-flight rest period. The minimum pre-flight rest at the home base should be at least 48 hours, and the minimum post-flight rest period at the home base should be 72 hours, with 2 and 3 local nights respectively. Suggest as additional barriers. No exemptions from the requirements on cumulative fatigue should be granted under these guidelines. Note that the suggested extension of rest in case of extended FTP could exceed by their own the requirements of the recurrent extended recovery period. Of course, the current situation does not reflect the normality, and statistics and data obtained do not reflect necessarily the operational normality. Under those guidelines, the operator could temporarily accept it also from ORO.FTL 110J that is required from the operator to change a schedule and crew arrangements if the actual operation exceeds the maximum flight duty period on more than 33% of the flight duties in that schedule during a scheduled seasonal period. Note that there are no exceptions on the other items of operator's responsibility. And most important, to ensure that flight duty periods are planned in a way that enables crew members to remain sufficient free from fatigue so that they can operate to a satisfactory level of safety. Now is time to have a look at the risk assessment. FRMS processes provide many tools that can be used to manage and mitigate organizational fatigue. We mentioned just before that there is not any exception from ORO.FTL.110B, and the operator still be responsible to ensure that flight duty periods are planned in a way that enables crew members to remain sufficient free from fatigue, so that they can operate to a satisfactory level of safety. In current circumstances, managing fatigue risk is becoming more critical and more difficult. Regulatory exemptions and alternative means of compliance may have introduced deviations to well-established procedures, and temporary revisions to operations manuals may have been issued under significant time pressure. In preparing for a gradual resumption of their activities, operators should take time to assess the risks associated with operating in such a new and uncertain environment. Crews and frontline personnel may have to implement new or modified procedures under significant pressure, thus working out of their comfort zone. The operator should develop a risk assessment to determine the probability and potential severity of fatigue-related risks to the planned flights. Senior management should also promote an integrated approach to safety management and compliance monitoring, supporting the management of change process based on a reliable hazard identification and risk assessment. Both activities need to be tailored to the operator's specific operational context. Whether if the operator applies for any FTL exception or not, operators have never faced such an extensive disruption of their operations and cannot rely on previous experience when analyzing the possible scenarios and solutions. Furthermore, they do not have sufficient and reliable data to identify all emerging hazards affecting air operations as well as continuing airworthiness, aerodrome operations, and air navigation services. Therefore, during the no phase, operators need to focus on the implementation of a robust management of change process to successfully identify new risks, determine effective mitigation measures, and implement strategies for deploying changes accordingly. The management of change process relies on a sound hazard identification and risk assessment. Safety management and compliance monitoring staff need to approach the hazard identification phase holistically. As the second step, if an FTL exception is required, this risk assessment should be assessed by the NCA before approving the exemption. And last but not least, the operator should carry out enhanced monitoring and analysis of FDM and crew fatigue reports generated during exempted operations, in order to have a better understanding of the impact on crew fatigue. Action has to be taken to address any issues identified by this exercise without delay. Again, I borrow a slide from AVIATIONLAB's FRM course that will be available through our website from September 2020. The course is already available to be delivered as classroom courses upon request. As you might know, an operator shall develop and implement risk assessment procedures that determine the probability and potential severity of fatigue-related events and identify when the associated risks require mitigation. The risk assessment procedures shall review identified hazards and link them to operational processes, their probability, possible consequences, and the effectiveness of existing safety barriers and controls. Under those special and unique circumstances, the operator should ensure that the risk assessment should identify the hazards related to crew fatigue depending on the potential scenario or combination thereof, and provide appropriate mitigations measures to reduce the consequences of the identified hazards as far as possible. The fatigue risk should be evaluated under the current condition even if there is not any FTL exception, as the combination of other factors might have changed. The risk assessment should also consider the cumulative effect of other relevant exemptions and alleviations, if any. Different exemptions affect different technical domains and may have been granted by different inspectors. As a consequence, while each exemption should include appropriate risk mitigations, their cumulative effect on safety may not have been fully assessed. Possibly, an exemption may affect the mitigations required by another exemption. Exemptions leading to reduced crew recency and training and checking may lead to an erosion of crew competence, which may become critical when having to apply abnormal or emergency procedures. This, combined with fatigue or aircraft systems failures, may lead to undesirable outcomes. The risk assessment should identify new hazards, airspace restrictions, degraded or unavailable air navigation services, and limitations in aerodrome services may also force the operator to conduct flights in an unfamiliar operational context. Unfortunately, the consequences of such hazards concentrate upon the air operator. Furthermore, the recovery phase may require significant changes in the operator's business model and operational procedures, inadequate documentation, and communication of changes that may introduce additional risks. Poor control of changes has significantly contributed to serious incidents and accidents in aviation history. The operator should also identify additional hazards that are not included in current EASA guidelines, but reflect unique local or company's specialties. The operator should consider new procedures to adapt to the new environment or new business model that might adapt. The new procedures should be established in short time, but the operator should ensure that all involved parties are formally informed. The procedures do not affect negatively staff or other functions of the operator, and a procedure for quick response feedback is established. During risk assessment or new procedures establishment, consider a lack of previous experience and data. external auditors or consultancies with experience on the field might be required, and methods to obtain quick information about the effects of change would be required. Reports from crew members are the faster way to get information, but just culture should be achieved in advance to have an efficient system. Lastly, the operator should monitor continuously changing the environment and include the information on the risk assessment procedure. As the information comes from various sources, a system that includes the continuous collection and prioritization of information, the group evaluation from all involved parties, and the spread of formal outcomes on an effective and usable way should be established.